Hello everyone and welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Josh, joined as ever by Ewan Patterson to talk about his favourite ever subject, Star Wars Battlefront, because it's a kind of a bittersweet moment, isn't it? You know, we've got DICE officially announcing that they are, or have actually just released their last ever update for the game and are now moving on to perhaps bigger and better things, depending on which franchise you prefer the shooter makers working on, whether it be Battlefield or Battlefront, because they are finally going full swing in the production of Battlefield 6, which for me is great news, but for long-time Battlefront fans is not probably what they want to hear, is it, you?
Yeah, literally right now, everything you just said, I'm just going, is it though? From like the Thor Ragnarok thing right now, and I have to let out some sort of Porg scream, which... That wasn't a scream. The Porg doesn't know what it's doing. But yeah, no, today is sees Battlefront get the 26th and what has turned out to be final update for Battlefront 2. It's going to include the Battle of Scarif, which is a long-requested map that was obviously in the previous Battlefront, which was actually, coincidentally, also the last DLC for that game. As a part of their Age of Rebellion, so they've been doing different things. They've had the Age of Republic with the Clone Wars, and then the Age of Resistance, which came around the Rise of Skywalker, and it kind of caps off what's probably been one of the most incredible, if not the greatest gaming comeback of all time. I know we always hail up Siege as this, you know, this exemplar of like, you know, the game that could in terms of turning around its fortunes at launch, but we really cannot, you know, overstate just how disastrous Battlefront 2's launch day controversy was. And for DICE to have gotten the game up to such a healthy position now, you know, 3 years on, near enough from release, it's kind of amazing.
Oh, dude, it's absolutely incredible, the fact that they managed to cultivate this passionate fan base out of a game that became, you know, the poster child for gaming controversies of, you know, essentially the 2010s. You know, it was the tipping point for microtransactions and, you know, greedy business practices and all of that. And yet, DICE have more or less stuck to their guns and provided these updates for, like you said, 3 years now, and transformed the experience into something genuinely compelling and one of the best Star Wars shooters you can, you know, play today, or if not ever. And even like a lapsed fan like me, I've never been into it on the level that you and Benroy have, but with every new update, I always find myself going back and at least playing a few hours, because what they've done with it is so appealing and is so, you know, good. So it does kind of suck to see them, you know, put out the final update and kind of say, look, we've completed our vision for Battlefront 2 now, but at the same time, like, they should be commended for the work they've put into it and sticking to a product that a lot of people would have been happy to see fail.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, you know, we'll get to whether this is a, you know, really is it part of the studio's vision per se, or whether, you know, outside circumstances from EA or, you know, whatever is going on right now has kind of forced their hand. But the actual update today includes loads of free things, because every single update has done, of course. We've got Scarif from Rogue One, original trilogy maps like Hoth and Tatooine, joining the Supremacy game mode, which is kind of a little bit more of the, not Galactic Conquest. Is it Galactic Conquest? The original mode from Battlefront? I think so. That's the game mode where you conquer different planets. I'm thinking of a different thing where you have the command posts anyway. It's a little bit more like that, and then the more command posts you have, you go up and take down the enemy's capital ship, kind of in the space battle thing you had from the original games. It's a lot of great fun. A load of really cool requested skins as well, like Robot Legs, Rebels Era More, which tragically is locked behind 5,000 kills in online multiplayer and co-op, so I'm going to go a little bit Sam Witwery and insane by the end of this entire update. We've got Rise of Skywalker Palpatine, so the Palpatine that does the do, and then Rey with her golden lightsaber as well. So weirdly more resistant skins than original trilogy skins here. I know a lot of people were after the Bespin skin Luke as one thing, or maybe even Chewbacca with C-3PO on his back from Empire Strikes Back, but unfortunately they haven't fulfilled those kind of requests. And there's also a mystery on the Takodana Mars' Castle map that people are currently in the process of solving. So lots of different things going on in this update, and it all kind of exemplifies DICE's commitment, or, you know, this experiment where instead of, you know, having a full post-launch plan, they basically tore up the rulebook after launch and were really committed to catering to the hardcore members of the community. And it's interesting to see how much that has paid dividends for them. You know, they've really focused on the Clone Wars at the time when Disney and Star Wars as a whole was kind of just like, we don't really care. And it's really paid off for them.
That Clone Wars announcement, I remember that almost feeling like a turning point, even not being in the community. The response to that reveal a few years ago was so well received and felt like it just earned them back kind of like so much respect, like you said, to cater to the hardcore fandom that was already there, rather than trying to grasp at an audience that was probably never going to return. I do have one question about this though. Why Rogue One? Because it seems like an odd time to plug that movie out of everything going on in the Star Wars universe. I mean, I dig Rogue One. A lot of people love it, but
yes,
it seems like a strange thing to end on. And that does make me wonder, like you teased earlier, whether or not this was their vision for the final kind of send-off, or whether their arm has kind of been bent a little to, get out the door.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that, because obviously in them turning around the game, I feel as though they felt as though if every single voice was telling them to do Clone Wars, they had to do Clone Wars immediately. And that's when you saw Geonosis updates, the special units like ARC Troopers, the Clone Wars skins for Anakin and Obi-Wan and all sorts, and General Grievous and Count Dooku and whatever. And then after that, they kind of basically, I think with the Rise of Skywalker, they were banking on that being, and it was a massive success of Battlefront. They logged the most amount of players since launch during that release window for Star Wars Episode 9. They had different updates around that movie. But again, they basically had this whole plan where it was like Age of Republic will have the Clone Wars, Age of Resistance will have the sequel trilogy, and then Age of Rebellion, because the original trilogy content had kind of been really neglected since launch. They've definitely had to put it in there, but it does feel like a weird one to conclude on right now, especially given all the hype going on around Clone Wars Season 7. We have all sorts of different requests for years for Ahsoka to be in the game, for Asajj Ventress to be in the game, and there were even leaked files a while ago where they had voice lines for Grievous, where he's like basically in-game confronting these characters. So it does seem as though they were planned at some point, but though that whole thing was cut. And that leads me to the theory going into Battlefield, which we'll get to in a second, that maybe this was not meant to be the original end, and I would have potentially seen DICE maybe continuing at least. I think maybe this game had at least one more update in it, is basically what I believe.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Battlefield there, so we should probably jump onto that topic. In the kind of, the release interviews for this update, and the Battlefield 5, which has announced its final update is coming in summer. I think it's just dropped one now, and they're working on a final content drop, and then moving on. It seems like DICE is getting all their teams aligned for the next Battlefield, which has been confirmed since the end of last year when EA did an investors call, and they confirmed that Battlefield 6, or whatever it's going to be called, will be coming in the fiscal year 2022, which starts in April 2021 and ends in March, April 2022. So, you would expect that game will be ramping up production. So it seems like they're all hands on deck to get that out. So that could be a good thing. It could prove that EA have a lot of confidence in the project, but at the same time, it does almost feel like they want that game to be their flagship next-gen experience, so they're taking teams off supporting these older games to make sure, it's as good as it can be, which, for a game like Battlefront, I think it's 3 years is fair. Like, you do say there that it could have one update in it, and I totally agree. But at the same time, it's almost unprecedented how long they've committed to working on this project after it launched. We see that more and more with games like Siege and Destiny and stuff like that, but never really one from EA. Even Battlefield 5 itself, while that is ending support at the end of the summer, that post-release support hasn't been anywhere near as strong as Battlefront's in my eyes. And I like Battlefield 5 at launch. I liked it a lot, but I dropped off that massively quick in comparison to the other games. And when you look at their releases, things like Wake Island came to the game, and the Battle Royale feature came months after launch, when it was actually teased before the game came out. It was handled, in my opinion, quite poorly. It wasn't a totally terrible job, but it was nowhere near the level that Battlefront had, in my opinion. So it's kind of like, looking at how it could have gone for Star Wars, it makes me all the more appreciative of how they did handle it. But I do admit that it would have been, especially when it comes to like the Clone Wars TV show, I feel like they could have easily got a huge win for that by including it as one final update. But who knows? maybe that'll come with Battlefront 3 if they ever get around to announcing or even making that game.
Yeah, the Battlefield comparison is really interesting to me because I remember before launch, and I might be getting my wires crossed with Battlefield 1 here, but I like the idea of an evolving military campaign online where you retain your player base by slowly introducing different theaters of war. I know Battlefield 1 had the Eastern Front update and had a few different things as well, but I really thought the vision behind Battlefield 5 was really, really interesting. I only jumped on that game literally a few months ago, and I haven't really played much of it since. I did enjoy what I played, but it's one of those things where I just feel as though it was weird to me, but at the same time, I think it's interesting how Battlefield 5 was made with that post-launch content kind of plan in place, whereas I feel ultimately, and I could be completely wrong here, I could be talking about my ass, but I feel as though Battlefront 2 was a little bit more reactive and listening to the community in terms of engaging concerns and fan requests. So a very interesting experiment in that sense, and I feel as though the community managers of Battlefront 2, Dennis Brownville and Ben Walk, who are both now, I believe, moving on to Battlefield, they deserve a lot of praise for kind of shepherding the community and getting everything kind of integrated into the actual vision of the game long term.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, at least in the early days of Battlefield 5, because I can't claim to, be currently entirely up to date and in that world now, but it always felt like they were being reactive, but not to what the people who were already invested actually wanted. And I don't mean like that in terms of cosmetics or anything. They were tweaking the game almost to be more accessible to a wider audience, to try and get people in, rather than, focusing on the genuine concerns that some of the fan base had about some of the new mechanics and some of the new features and how gameplay was balanced and stuff like that. Whereas Battlefront seemed, like you said, to be more or less the exact opposite. It was reactive, but in a kind of more in a smarter way, I suppose, which does bode well, I think, for Battlefield 6 if those members, those community managers, those teams are moving on to this, new project. Hopefully that will be the best of both worlds. But I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are you looking forward to giving Battlefront 2 its final hurrah, or do you wish it could have squeezed one more content update out of the game? Either way, while you're down there, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't, I've been Josh. You can follow me on Twitter at Josh Broom with 2 O's, joined by Ewan Patterson, who you can follow on Twitter at. And we will see you soon. That is his inner spirit animal just screaming to play Battlefront, but in fact he's actually at work, so that sucks. And give him loads of grief about it. Bye everyone.
Bye.